Welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's just jump right in, shall we? Today we're unpacking what I think is one of the most incredible tensions at the very heart of human survival and modern agriculture. It's this wild story of a literal life giver that, if things go wrong, transforms into a devastating life taker. We are talking about phosphate.
I want you to think about this for a second. What if the exact same mineral that's keeping humanity fed is simultaneously suffocating our lakes and rivers? We all get that we need fertilizers to grow crops, right? But the crazy chemical catch-22 of our time is that the exact same nutrient that makes a wheat field absolutely thrive can literally decimate a delicate aquatic ecosystem.
And wow, the grim reality of that paradox is captured right here. This is the Ganges River at Kanpur, India. Thousands of dead fish just floating belly up by the banks. This catastrophic die-off was documented in 2014, then again in 2015, and again in 2018. It's a recurring nightmare for these local communities. And the unseen culprit driving this massive loss of life, it all comes back to exactly how we use phosphate.
So, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the ultimate agricultural paradox. Second, where does phosphate actually come from? Third, the journey from rock to farm. Fourth, when lakes turn toxic. And finally, we'll bust some common phosphate myths.
All right, part one, the ultimate agricultural paradox, the double-edged sword of farming.
Look, we're dealing with a biological necessity here that literally dictates whether populations thrive or starve. There is absolutely no substitute for phosphorus in agriculture. None. You can't just, swap it out for a synthetic alternative cooked up in a lab if we ever run low. It is quite literally Earth's multivitamin. Without it, we simply cannot grow the sheer volume of food required to sustain the billions of people on this planet.
But the contrast here is just stark. On one hand, phosphate is the ultimate life giver. It's completely essential for all global crop production. But on the flip side, it's a life taker. When this vital nutrient runs off our fields and into our oceans and seas, it creates what oceanographers call dead zones. Globally, researchers recognize as many as 405 of these dead zones. These are massive areas completely starved of oxygen where marine life simply cannot survive. So, quick recap to lock this in. Phosphate is essential and irreplaceable for crops, but it causes massive aquatic death when misused. It really is the ultimate double-edged sword of our modern world.
Moving on to part two, where does phosphate actually come from? Mining the Earth's reserves. Now, what's really fascinating here is the staggering monopoly of the global supply chain. Out of the world's roughly 72 billion tons of phosphate rock reserves, a massive 69% is located in just one single country, Morocco. Think about that for a second. Egypt holds 4%, China holds just 3%, and the entire rest of the world combined shares the remaining 24%. This massive geographical bottleneck makes the whole global agricultural supply chain incredibly vulnerable. To put that global reliance into perspective for you, 9.66 million tons. That is exactly how much rock phosphate India alone had to import in just the 2021 to 2022 period. Because many countries, like India, have really limited or low-grade domestic ores, they are highly reliant on importing just massive quantities from those few nations that actually hold the good reserves.
So, wrapping this section up, out of 72 billion tons globally, Morocco holds a 69% monopoly, which leaves nations like India importing nearly 10 million tons annually just to keep their farming sectors alive. Okay, part three, from rock to farm, the phosphate supply chain. So, how exactly do we turn a hard sedimentary rock sitting in Morocco into the vegetables on your dinner plate? Well, it's this massive, really fascinating industrial journey. Step one, the mineral is literally blasted and mined out of the earth as sedimentary rock phosphate. Step two, it undergoes a process called beneficiation. That's basically just a heavy-duty washing and sorting phase to strip away all the natural impurities. Then, step three, these huge chemical plants take that purified rock and convert it into commercial fertilizers, like DAP or diammonium phosphate. And finally, step four, those specific fertilizers are shipped worldwide and applied directly to farm soils.
To summarize, the mineral is mined from ancient sedimentary rocks. It gets processed in chemical plants and then dispersed globally onto agricultural fields. It sounds super efficient, right? But here is exactly where the whole system breaks down. Which brings us to part four, when lakes turn toxic, the deadly chain reaction. Imagine what happens when a heavy monsoon or huge rainstorm hits freshly fertilized agricultural fields. All that concentrated plant food doesn't just neatly stay in the dirt. Nope, the runoff washes straight into our rivers and lakes, triggering a process called eutrophication. Basically, this just means a body of water gets overfed with nutrients, and that causes an explosive and ultimately deadly growth of algae. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact chain reaction that turns a perfectly healthy lake into a graveyard. Step 1. The farm runoff hits the rivers, totally loaded with phosphates. Step 2. The naturally occurring algae in the water gorge on this sudden all-you-can-eat buffet, and they bloom exponentially. But here's the catch. Algae have really short lifespans, just a few days. So, step 3. These massive blooms die off and begin to decompose. Step 4. That decomposition process acts like a giant vacuum, completely depleting the dissolved oxygen in the water. Scientists call this state hypoxia. And finally, step 5. With absolutely no oxygen left, the fish suffocate in mass. This exact process is what causes the horrifying fish kills we saw earlier in Kanpur. The research outlines just how far-reaching this devastation really is. Listen to this quote right from the source material. Algal blooms lead to hypoxia, resulting in the mortality of fish. Toxins produced by algal blooms also lead to illness and mortality of cattle. So the absolutely crucial point here is that this isn't just an underwater problem. If cattle, or even our own pets, drink from these polluted, blooming lakes, the toxins produced can be completely lethal to them as well. So, quick recap of this tragedy. Runoff overfeeds the water, which triggers these oxygen-stealing algal blooms, which results directly in devastating fish suffocation. It's this brutal cycle where a fertilizer meant to create life on land literally destroys it in the water. All right, part 5, common phosphate myths, clarifying the pollution sources. Now that we understand the core mechanics here, let's clear up some pretty widespread misinformation. First up, this common myth that only industrial factories pollute rivers. I mean, we naturally tend to picture giant smokestacks and glowing pipes when we think of water pollution, right? But the fact is, farm fertilizer runoff is a massive contributor to eutrophication. While industrial effluents absolutely do play a role, the vast continuous runoff from thousands of acres of farmland is heavily responsible for supplying the phosphate that fuels these dead zones. And here's another really dangerous myth, that algal blooms are just harmless green plants or, unsightly pond scum. The scary fact is, certain blooms, especially marine red tides, contain microscopic organisms called dinoflagellates. Try saying that 3 times fast. But seriously, these produce incredibly potent neurotoxins that accumulate in aquatic life. If humans consume tainted shellfish from these areas, it can lead to severe poisoning syndromes for which there is literally no known antidote. No way around it, it's serious stuff. So, the vital takeaways for this section. Farms are major polluters right alongside factories, and these resulting algal blooms can act as highly toxic, deadly neurotoxins, not just oxygen thieves. Which brings us to the ultimate lingering question we all have to ask ourselves. We need phosphate to eat, we absolutely cannot survive without it, but how do we survive without destroying our waters? It's a profound challenge for scientists, for the agricultural industry, and really for all of us trying to balance human survival with environmental health. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope this sparked your curiosity and gave you a deeper understanding of the hidden forces shaping our world. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you next time.